is Ryan Kearns from Wild About Trial. We've now finished the first week in the James Holmes murder trial. We've been here in the courtroom and on location, and we learned from opening statements that this was going to be an intense trial. We knew that we'd hear from a lot of the victims. We've heard from 26 witnesses so far in only 3 days of testimony. Now, most of those have been survivors or police officers that responded to the scene. We knew it would be gruesome, but we didn't know how bad it would get. Gory photos, stories of gore and blood. We've seen the families in the courtroom with tears in their eyes. We've seen tears not only from the families, but from the jurors themselves and from the media pool. It's been one of the most heart-wrenching stories, and we've sat through it and provided you with coverage throughout. We know that we can expect for the next 2 weeks is more and more of this testimony, more survivor testimony, and more gut-wrenching violence. This is important because the prosecutors have to show that if he was sane, he deserves the death penalty, and they want jurors to know, to remember the faces and the families of the victims and the survivors. But we haven't even gotten to the major issue in the case. That'll come down the line, and that's whether or not James Holmes, who has entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, was actually sane or insane at the time. And that burden is on the prosecution to prove that he was actually sane and that he knew right from wrong when he walked into that theater with the body armor and the weapons and opened fire. We're going to hear down the line from psychological experts, from psychiatrists that analyzed him, so you can expect a lot of back-ended testimony that's going to solve the actual legal issue at the case. As of right now, all we can do is feel touched by the victims and the survivors and the horrific acts that James Holmes caused them.
Emotional testimony continued Thursday as 6 law enforcement officers were called to the stand. Each witness described the horrific scene that they encountered at the theater. For the first time, defense attorneys cross-examined witnesses, but only those who had direct contact with Holmes.
As Nicole said, this is the first time in the entire trial that we've seen defense attorneys cross-examine a prosecution witness. Now, their strategy all along has been to allow all this testimony and all the evidence from the survivors and the victims without cross-examining them because they have already conceded that Holmes was the shooter. So they think that they've already established this part of the crime. However, when it comes to the element of sanity and insanity, that's the one element the defense attorneys are trying to go after specifically. And each witness, each officer that had direct contact with Holmes, it's important for the defense attorneys to get out what exactly Holmes appeared. What was his physical appearance? What was his outlook? And they were able to establish today that he was detached, he was smelly, he was looking into the distance, he had no outward emotions whatsoever. Now, these are important for 2 reasons. One, it's important to establish that Holmes looked crazy, just for the jurors to see that. But also to establish these sort of physical characteristics, because every one of the experts that come in later at trial, each one of the psychological experts and the psychiatrists that analyzed Holmes will use these physical symptoms in their analysis. I'm here with Nicole Coleman, I'm Ryan Kearns from Wild About Trial, and we'll be back next week with more coverage of the James Holmes murder trial.